I'm Randall Squires. I'm a GYN. Y'all have heard me before. Who knows where UCLA is? No, the big one I'm talking about, the big one. Upper Conway, Lower Ainer. Y'all know where Conway is? You know where Ainer is? That's where I'm from. So UCLA, Upper Conway, Lower Ainer. They forgot. I mean, wow. Y'all ever go to the beach? You go through Ainer, you get a ticket. Okay, today I'm going to talk about postmenopausal medicine. And I see a lot of men. I don't take care of men, but I think it'll probably all pertain. Actually, I do genetic testing on men, but I don't physically take care of men as far as their health. We're going to talk about postmenopausal medicine in reference to the bones. Everybody in here is in one of three categories. They've got normal bones, or they got brittle bones, or they got thin bones. So normal is what we want. Thin is called osteopenia. Brittle is called osteoporosis. And how do you figure out which one you are? You get a bone density. How do you get a bone density? Different ways. There's a portable bone density machine called a heel bone density machine. Did we have it here today? So if you had it done, you got a number. And if you got a plus, you're above average. Did anybody get a plus? Are you serious? God, that's great. You got a plus number. That's really, really, really good. Because you're normal, your bones are normal. Yeah, let me cover that. Your bones are normal in strength if you got a number -1 or higher. So -1 or higher is normal.
-1 or higher?
Yes, is normal. -1 to -2.5 is thin, osteopenia. And -2.5 or less is osteoporosis. So normal, thin, brittle. You don't want to have osteopenia or osteoporosis, and if you do, there are things that can be done to decrease your chance of having a fracture. Of people that have brittle bones, 20% of people that have brittle bones, if they break their hip, die. 20% of people that break their hip from brittle bones die. Why do they die? They die because they're immobilized. The broken bone doesn't kill them, they're immobilized. When you can't move around, you have a higher chance of getting a blood clot in your leg. If it's in your leg, it can go to your lung. If it goes to your lung, you can die. So if you can't get up and around, you don't breathe as deep. If you don't breathe as deep, you can get pneumonia. So you don't want to break your hip. You want your bones to be as strong as possible. 20% of people die from a broken hip. 20% of people end up in a nursing home for a broken hip. And 20% of people 6 months later after they break their hip are still using something to help them walk. So it's a big deal to break your hip. And I'm going to talk about what increases your chance of breaking your hip, how do you determine if your bones are thin, how you can help your bones to treat it, and some preventative things you can do to keep from breaking your hip even if your bones are thin. And just before I forget it, because I didn't make a slide on it, fall prevention. In other words, things you can do to prevent fall. It's Christmas, everybody's got lights, cords everywhere. And it's going to snow and you need salt. So, really you need to watch for those cords and watch for those rugs that get wadded up in the hall, because all of those are traps to fall. So watch for the cords, watch for the rugs. Go ahead and get you a little bit of salt from Lowe's, so if it snows you can put it on your steps. And even if the steps look good, just don't get on them unless you've salted them, because you can, it's very much known thing in the emergency room. If it snows or sleets, the hips are just going to come rolling in. Broken wrist and broken hips. So it's a big deal. So we're going to talk about postmenopausal bone health. So I said all of y'all are in one of three categories. You're normal, your bones, or thin, your bones, or brittle. You don't want them to be thin, you don't want them to be brittle. What does it look like? It really looks brittle. So this is a bone here that's nice and thick and strong, and this is the core of the bone, the lining of the bone. What do you call that? You used to eat fried chicken and you'd break the chicken leg in half and you'd suck out the marrow. That's that. So if it's thick, there's less chance that you're going to break your hip. If it's thin, there's a higher chance. So you want thick bones. We got medicine that helps you keep your bones thick. And how does it work? And this is kind of weird. Right here in the marrow of the bone are two kinds of cells. One of them chews up bone and one makes bone. So it's a constant turnover of the cells. So you think the bone's just a hard thing like a rock and it just sits there and there it is. No. You've got two kinds of cells in your body. One's called an osteoclast. It chews up bone. One's called an osteoblast, which makes bone. Did I get that right? It doesn't matter. Osteoblast chews up bone, and osteoclast makes it. But anyway, you got one that eats bone and one that makes it. The medicines that we give, Fosamax, Actonel, Beniva, they make the ones that chew it up slow down. So the ones that make it make more. So it's just really a matter of letting one of the cells not work so good and let the other cell work well. And clast does make and blast does break. I think that's right. Yeah. That sounded good. Blast breaks. Yeah, okay. Blast, I was right. Okay, great. So normal and brittle. You want your bones to be normal. What do you do to keep your bones from becoming thin? Or what do you do if your bones are thin? First of all, calcium. For years and years and years we said, take calcium tablets. Take calcium tablets. You know what we say now? Don't. Why? Increase it. God, y'all smart. Andrea, did you teach them? So it causes heart disease in women. Believe it or not, all this time we've been telling everybody, take calcium, and it does help your bones. And it does increase your chance of getting a kidney stone. But also they've done a study and it said it may cause heart attacks and heart disease in women. Now they haven't studied it for men. So right now I tell all ladies to take calcium in their diet, to get calcium in their diet, to not take a tablet. You read the slide. I bet you did. Yeah, you can't cheat. So anyway, calcium, 1,200 a day. 1,200 a day, calcium. I'll show you sources of calcium. Skim milk and whole milk, fat-free milk, all have the same amount of calcium, so it doesn't matter. Calcium. Vitamin D, and which vitamin is D3? Get it in a tablet. You can get it in the sunshine, but the sunshine causes skin cancer. So it's a fine balance. You know, everything's got something. Calcium causes kidney stones, makes your bones strong. Vitamin D in sunlight causes melanoma, but makes your bones strong. So you just got to do a trade-off. Everything in medicine and in life is a trade-off. There's always something good for something bad. Sources of calcium. Broccoli. Wasn't it George Bush hated broccoli? Yeah. Broccoli. Sardines. Nobody likes it. When's the last time you ate sardines? When's the last time you opened a can of sardines? When somebody got married and you put them under the seat of the car. Y'all did that, didn't you? You put what on the engine? Limburger. Is that Yankee cheese? Andrea, help me. I think it's Yankee. We eat Velveeta in the South. And it don't smell. So cheese, milk, sardines, greens, all that stuff is good for calcium. Prevention, exercise. Just plain old walk 3 times a week for 30 minutes. You don't got to do weights and elliptical and run, and just walk 3 times a week, 30 minutes. It's considered a weight-bearing exercise. It helps your bones. Oh, another good thing about vitamin D. Vitamin D helps your bone. Does anybody else know what vitamin D does? It helps your balance. We don't really know, but because it helps your bones, it makes them strong, but also it helps your balance, so you're less likely to become imbalanced and fall. So vitamin D, and they are implicating vitamin D for like everything known to man, heart, diabetes, it's wonderful for everything. So walk. Do not smoke. Smoking makes your bones thin. Do not drink. Drinking makes your bones thin. Evaluation of your bones. How do you get them checked? You get a bone density. It's an x-ray that measures the strength of your back and hip bones. You can have a heel bone density. It measures the strength of your heel. But the standard of care is the back and the hip. And that's what we, a heel is a pretty good screen, but really all the studies are based on the true bone density, which is the back and the hip. And it is radiation. It's a very small dosage of radiation to have a bone density done. And the recommendations are, at least for women, to start bone density around 59 to 60, or if they have risk factors, to start them earlier. Bottom line, everybody has a risk factor. When I tell you what the risk factors are, everybody has a risk factor. And that's the bone density machine, and you lay on it in the little scanner above. So the bone density is going to tell you just what we said. You're normal, you got osteopenia or osteoporosis. Okay, increase your risk of osteoporosis. The older you get, the thinner your bones get, period. The skinnier you are, the thinner your bones get, period. So, what do? You got a little sugar on you, you're not going to break your hip. And you got something to pad it, if you do. But if you're thin, you have a higher chance of the one in medical school, what did they tell us to watch for? The skinny white woman that's smoking and drinking on the front porch. I'm not kidding. Elderly, thin, white, smoking and drinking, rocking on the front porch, because when she goes down the steps to get the pecans, plonk. Classic. So, you can't do anything about age. You could gain weight. You can't change your race. You can quit smoking and drinking. So anyway, white women, much more than any other race, have an increased risk of brittle bones. And the older you are, and if you smoke and drink. What are other things? If your mom broke her hip. If your mom broke her hip, she probably had osteoporosis, and you have a higher chance of breaking your hip. If you've broken a bone before, you have a higher chance you're going to break it again. And steroids, and this is if, like prednisone, people that are on steroids on a daily basis, the steroid will thin the bones. And rheumatoid arthritis is associated with brittle bones. So hip fracture, what happens is, right there, the center of the bone, the marrow gets thin, crack. It's a done deal. And it's usually the hip or the wrist. Last slide, not a long talk. I'm going to ask, was that sarcasm? Because when my kids were little and I said something sarcastic, they would go, was that another mean joke? It hadn't been that long. I only had like 9 slides. Tough audience. Okay, treatment. Treatment of thin or brittle bones. The main line of treatments are bisphosphonates. And what do bisphosphonates do? They slow down the chewy cells and they make bone cells work good. So the osteoclast work and the blast quit blasting. And the main ones are Fosamax, Boniva, and Actonel. Taken first thing in the morning, empty stomach, can't lie down, can't recline for 30 minutes because if you do not lie down or eat or drink anything, it increases indigestion. Indigestion, reflux acid irritates the esophagus, and it's a relative contraindication to taking bisphosphonates. And it's the cheapest. Fosamax is the cheapest thing, it's been around forever, works good. And then you hear, oh, but I heard there's bad stuff about that stuff. People can break their hip or they can crack their jaw, and you're exactly right. There's an atypical hip fracture caused by these medicines. Now you say, I took it, so I wouldn't break my hip. Well, all I can say is there's a higher chance of breaking your hip from the osteoporosis than there is from the medicine that can cause the fractured hip, atypical fracture. I've been giving Fosamax probably 30 years. To my knowledge, I've had one lady that had an atypical hip fracture. One. I'm not sure exactly how it works, to be honest with you. It has to do with the turnover of the cells, the building ones and the ones that tear it down. And somehow there can be some imbalance, and I guess the ones that tear it down take it over. But we've now started telling people that if their bone density stabilize or improve, to take a drug holiday, to go off of it after about 5 years, and then get your bone density in a couple of years and see where you stand and see if you need to restart it. The other thing is osteonecrosis of the jaw. The jaw can get brittle. And I've been giving these medicines for 30 years and I've never had anybody have that. And then for people that can't take it because they get indigestion, or people that take it but it doesn't work, we can give the same kind of medicine IV. It's the Reclast. Reclast is given IV. For thin, it's given every 2 years. For brittle, it's given every year. So for osteopenia, every 2 years, osteoporosis every year. And then we got a whole lot of fancy ones, Prolia and all these others, but they're kind of last ditch things because they can have quite a few side effects that can be pretty serious associated with them. So basically my mainstay as far as treating people for 30 years, I'd say 95% of people, if I treat them, are going to be on one of these medicines. The other 5% I'm going to give Reclast. And as far as the other medications, realistically, I'm not going to use them except rarely because of the risk associated with them.